Welcome everybody to this week's podcast. I'm here with Kareem from the Atlas Network. I actually met him at the Co-Create event in Las Vegas, hosted by Alibaba. So this was Alibaba's first USA conference stateside. So it was very, very interesting to see, how they humanized the conference. But, Kareem, I brought you to the podcast because you have been there, you've been building your company in this world on the fulfillment and the sourcing side. And I wanted to, go through some of the growth hacking techniques that you were able to master over time. So please introduce yourself to the audience and let's have a great chat.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Really appreciate the time on the show. As we said, we met together in Las Vegas at the Alibaba Co-Create Summit, where I was a keynote speaker on the topic of the hard truth of product sourcing. My name is Kareem Kafoury. The company is called The Atlas Network, and we've been in kind of global supply chain solutions for almost 20 years now. So definitely happy to discuss with you, how we do what we do over here, how we got started, things we've learned along the way, and, how we're managing in this very interesting world that we're living in, where supply chain has become a extremely important and critical point of view for almost any business these days.
Yeah, and I'd love to start with, on your website, under your logo, you have a very, very bold slogan. And oftentimes, many people are always like, what does that mean? Because it's the flip of what people normally think about, right? So tell me about that, and what is the slogan that the Atlas Network is proud to?
You mean like mass production delivered safely?
The first approved.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, right, exactly. So the Atlas Network is the first US-based verified supplier on Alibaba.com. And, we're very, very proud of that designation that happened in this past year. And basically, that's part of Alibaba's approach to really building large-scale services and innovation processes for the United States and other markets other than just Asia. And because of the fact that, we've been doing this kind of global supply chain sourcing and supply chain solutions for a long time and have a significant amount of credibility and references, we also went through the very rigorous process that Alibaba has for additional verification process, where we were basically audited by a third-party group. And after going through that process, we were the first US-based verified supplier on Alibaba.com. So it's a very proud and unique distinction for us. We've obviously been doing this work not necessarily on Alibaba for, again, almost 20 years, but we built a storefront on Alibaba, and we've been getting a lot of access through the platform, and we can definitely talk more and more about that. But yeah, it's a nice title, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, and Alibaba is probably one of the world's largest sourcing platforms, so it's a very strategic play for you. So I want to kind of rewind it back, because it took you time to get to where you are today. There was a lot of growth, ups and downs, I'm sure. And so let's start at the very beginning. Like, that's quite a while ago, right? And so what made you start, this company? How did you get into this when, the internet wasn't readily available? It was a lot harder to do what you do now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think any entrepreneur will tell you that there's no straight line to success. You try a lot of different things and in different ways until you sort of hit upon a sort of secret sauce that works. For us, I was a former regulator. I came from the financial markets. I worked at places like the Securities and Exchange Commission in the Office of International Affairs. I was at NASD FINRA for many years as well. So I was a regulator. I did have family and opportunities in Asia. And in visiting, I noticed this significant break, basically in kind of the global supply chain and sourcing market. And again, having been a regulator where words like risk mitigation and compliance and things of that nature, were kind of rolling off my tongue, it just made sense to me that, some of these philosophies and approaches should be applied to this process, to this kind of, especially in the overseas sort of sourcing market. And remember, this was in the early 2000s, where in kind of the financial industry, you had increased regulation. You had many consulting firms and stock market and financial changes and terms like third-party attestation and so forth were running rampant. So it was already sort of in the nomenclature of sort of the business world. So the beginnings of the Atlas Network came about from the idea of trying to do mass production delivered safely. And then there were a whole bunch of sort of tenets on how to do that. And we can kind of talk a little bit about sort of the ways that we do things over here at Atlas, which really have remained very unchanged on almost 2 decades. But basically that we never sold on price. We always sold on security. We always sold on peace of mind, and really being able to have a mass production and fulfillment process done in a very methodical way that would produce a high quality outcome that was repeatable and basically met standards for our customers.
Very, the way you describe it, it's almost like a mirror of your FINRA days where, the customers are the investors and, you want to stand it up on a platform that, it's not just about an investment, but rather, you're investing in something sound and the customers being the investors. So I definitely see the angle you're going for, but it's also a parallel that I don't see very often, right? You come from a very unique angle.
Yes. I mean, again, and even to today, you still see it. There are a significant amount of businesses that when it comes to kind of global sourcing, they're chasing the dollar. They're chasing, who can get the lowest price outcome for a customer and what is that going to look like? For us, it was never really about that. I mean, yes, of course, you want to try to save the customer costs and things of that nature, but we built a model from the very beginning that was robust and was basically what we would call the 3 pillars of our business. And the 3 pillars were essentially, first of all, to pick the right supplier, because that got you 70 to 80% of the way there. And what did that mean? That meant, ISO certified, had all of their accreditations, had been doing business for many, many years, a mixture of quantitative and qualitative factors that basically made these suppliers, kind of cut the mustard, if you want to say, as far as quality. Then the second pillar is you must have eyes and ears on the ground for your productions. You really needed to have people that were going to be in these factories and suppliers and making sure that things were going according to plan, according to standards that were being set. And then finally, the third part was having third-party attestation, similar again to the financial industry, right? Auditing the books and so on. So we have always brought in third parties outside of the QC of our team or the QC of the factory to ensure that you had a clean bill of health from a third-party attested source. And there are large ones like Bureau Veritas or VTrust. And if you need additional like lab testing, you go to places like Intertek or SGS for very hypersensitive type of products. But this mechanism of like the right supplier, eyes and ears on the ground, and third-party attestation to kind of kick the tires really is the way that we've always sold what we do and has allowed us to be agnostic when it comes to the actual products. Because we produce in commodities and textiles and innovation goods across all kinds of substrates, metal, glass, plastic, rubber, wood, silicone, fabrics, machinery. And it's always been that simple model, right supplier, eyes and ears on the ground, third-party attestation. And I think that's the secret sauce for us. And a lot of people don't sell on that, and a lot of people don't present that, but that has always been our model here.
So I want to unpack that, because from a growth mindset, like I feel like you've landed on those three pillars, maybe because, all the challenges, tribulations, maybe even some shortcomings that you've experienced. But why is, like, I know you mentioned lightly, but why is finding the right supplier, especially if you're an entrepreneur looking to start create a company, but because sometimes people, like what you're saying, they chase it to the lowest dollar cost. And like, in your opinion, why is it so important to find the right one rather than the cheapest one?
Oh, that is the $1 million question. That is so critical. And even to today, with my own team that I've been working with for years and years and years, when we step into some kind of a situation which isn't ideal, the first question we always go back to is, was this the right supplier? And why wasn't it the right supplier? Either for, they may have been good for another product, but not this product, so on, so on, so forth. Why is because it sets the tone of the entire engagement from the beginning, right? So when you're picking that right supplier, the price is the last thing you need to look at. It literally is the last thing you need to look at, which, especially if it's something that's never been done before, like an innovation product or something that is going to take a significant back and forth, some development and so forth. You have to make sure that the supplier has got their accreditations. You have to make sure that they've worked in international markets. If you're working across international markets, you have to make sure that they've done things similar to what you are trying to do, right? That it's not like all of a sudden something that's completely random or foreign to them. And that's a reality, because when it comes to global sourcing, the number one thing that you hear from suppliers is, yes, we can do that. Even if they can't do that, even if they've never done it before.
It's the yes game.
Exactly. And so you have to see evidence that they have done it, maybe see samples of things that are like 50 or 70% close to what you're trying to do. So it's very, very critical to turn over these important, as I mentioned before, quantitative and qualitative stones, so that in the end, you are not going to be a tiger trying to chase your tail and going around and around in circles, or worst case scenario, do a significant amount of development and then have to then pivot or shift to another supplier because you were short-sighted. You said, oh, this one was 10 cents cheaper than that one, but guess what? That 10 cents just cost you $5 of headaches. So it's very, very important. And one of the things that we do here is we never go to one supplier with any quote ever. We usually go to at least 5, and we probably produce samples and proposals and so on with probably 2 to 3. And then that way we really get an accurate picture of like, who's really going to be able to put this thing together. And it's worth it. It's worth it to do that due diligence, even to the level of producing samples with 2 or 3 different suppliers, especially if it's something that's complicated. We've lost projects through time simply because of the fact that we picked the wrong supplier. And you go down the road and one way or another, the client just says, hey, it's taken too long, or it's not what I'm expecting, or we bow out. We will say, hey, you know what? We're not happy with the supplier we've chosen. We can start a different thing. We know nobody's happy about this. So, I mean, it's absolutely the most important thing you could do is that first step. It's got to be in place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just to share, someone is going to be paying for it. So you may be saving $1 now, but let's say further down the line, maybe they are figuring out for the first time. You're going to be paying with their time.
Yeah.
Right? And can you share a quick story of one such scenario where choosing the wrong supplier that ultimately hurt them, even though it was a lower cost?
We're choosing the wrong supplier that a customer chose a wrong supplier at a lower cost and it hurt them. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Without really kind of giving any true names, but we did have one client of ours who had come to us early on with a production, and they had said to us, hey, our price is XYZ cents. And we had looked at, let's call it 10 or 20 different factories in the industry and said, you know what, we really believe that whatever you're dealing with here is not valid. Your pricing is not valid. We've gone across reputable suppliers, and we're at 5 times what you're talking about. Okay. And this is not just one, it's, let's say, across 10 different suppliers. No, we need to keep, really razor thin margins. We have to do it this way. This is the group. We're going to take this on ourselves. And thank you very much. And hopefully, maybe you can help us later on at another time with another project. Okay, fine. Okay. Probably 4 to 6 months later, we get a call, frantic, from these folks that they produced with a group that was not actually a factory, but in fact was a trading company that said that it was a factory that was theirs and produced a golden sample, so something that was like supposed to be perfect. When the production actually arrived to them, everything was basically in pieces, broken, not according to specs. You're talking about something like a 50% defect rate, something really terrible. And they were just losing their mind. How can you help us? How can you get the train back on the tracks? We're trying to launch in 2 months or some kind of thing. And, and the reality of it is that that's a moment there where you have to sit back and say, there's no benefit to saying, hey, we told you so, or something of that nature. All you can do is say, listen, a lot of entrepreneurs make what we would call expensive mistakes. These are scenarios where you try to take it all on yourself, because that's the nature that you have had to be an entrepreneur. You've always been used to taking things on yourself. But sometimes it's better to outsource it to a professional group that is going to stand behind the products, and more specifically is going to arrange a scenario where you are going to be working with reputable groups that if there's an issue, they are going to stand behind what it is. And in the end, that client became our client, and we resolved their problems, and we were able to, get them back to where they needed to be in a very short order. So they didn't really miss much of a beat there. But I mean, true disaster. They were chasing the dollar. They wanted to take it all on themselves. They didn't see any value to what it is that we do, because they just didn't know any better. And they almost wrecked their entire business. And I've seen that happen. I've seen companies literally go out of business because they try to bite off more than they can chew, or pick that wrong supplier, or whatever else, those initial steps. And it will destroy a business, because you'll have quality issues, you'll have safety issues, you'll miss sales cycles. I mean, it just doesn't end. It's just
missed launches.
It's a complete domino effect, and it all starts with that initial process. So
yeah, and I can kind of just echo on this, because you think that you're getting, let's say the product is at slight defect rate, but you saved a few bucks. You're going to be paying for that later in customer support, creative ways to make your customers happy, but trying to get those reviews from 3.5 stars to 4.5 stars. It comes back around, and
absolutely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it will, not many cases. Let me put it to you this way: there are more cases than not that it can actually just destroy your business. Absolutely destroy it, like go out of business. And it really just comes down to what kind of product it is. I mean, if you're talking about products that have very high safety, standards, I mean, that's it. One kind of black dot on your record and you could be just out. People just won't want to work with you anymore. Things like government contracts, super sensitive things, child products, so forth. I mean, these are things that have to be so tightly managed, and it has to be reviewed and third-party attested, and there are different certifications that need to be done on things that are like electronics for like anti-flammable or electrocution hazards or kids products. So I mean, you really, really, really have got to have your head screwed on very tight when it comes to some of this sourcing.
Yeah, and as an entrepreneur, the last thing you want is, let's say you built the momentum, you built this growth, and everything just goes lost because you missed this initial step or this precaution. I've heard stories of very successful cookie company that through mold, one of the packages, they had to refund all customers.
Yeah, recall
the co-packer completely. Now they're out of business, and it was
You
Just
can't
little
you
things
can't
like
come
that.
you can't come back from some of those things when you are
Yeah.
an upstart company and you have something like that and you gotta take the blame for it and so I mean it's difficult, very very difficult challenge in that way. So when people come to work at the Atlas Network or with the Atlas Network, what we try to give them is peace of mind. I mean, in the end, we are not the manufacturer. We never claim to be that. We are a mass production oversight and service company. We offer supply chain solutions. We make it turnkey by pulling together 5 or 6 different suppliers, especially for products that may just not need one component to its production, but 5 different things that then come together to make one thing. The mass production kind of oversight process, the quality control arrangement, the third-party attestation, the logistics, all of that. We pull it all together for these folks so it's all in one and it's turnkey, even though we're not the manufacturer.
Got it. And so one of the questions that we often get asked is because your business it's a B2B company, and it's not the direct to consumer. You understand those business models. You understand you use influencers. You do X, Y, and Z. For B2B models, especially for what you're doing, it's a very different type of sales cycle, a different type of growth, and you've been around for a very long time. So tell us how did you grow your business to where it is today? Because this is a very challenging question for B2B companies where it's not such a well-published playbook, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this business is all about reputation, and that is pretty much the beginnings. You do a great job for one, and then it spreads like wildfire, especially when it's a industry or an area of business that has a lot of fragmentation or an area that has a lot of nightmare stories and challenges. And, I don't know many businesses that tried to procure things in the overseas markets and didn't face some level of challenges, right? And so at that moment, if you have that sort of better mousetrap to reduce those challenges and issues, now it's a matter of visibility for your business to then allow people to know that you exist. And the way that we've always sort of done that has been through the industry. So we would be involved in different kinds of trade shows. We have a lot of very long-standing relationships with design firms and engineering firms and groups like that, where they design the first part of it and then say, okay, how are we going to now make it? And then they would then present the Atlas Network as a solution to make those ideas into reality, which is what we do here. And word of mouth. A lot of trade shows, industry referral, word of mouth, these have been big things. We have recently been doing more and more digital, online advertising, just because supply chain issues and so on have been such kind of keywords or buzzwords, and people are looking for that. They're doing Google searches, they're looking for supply chain solutions. We can come up as, opportunities for that. And then honestly, this relationship with Alibaba that we started off the conversation with as well is a great opportunity because it basically is bringing to us people who are looking for the things that we make for others and are looking for a verified solution for that. I mean, when people go into Alibaba, they're looking for that kind of gold standard trading partner or supplier, verified supplier, and that's what we are. So these are the different ways that we're sort of like getting out into the space these days.
Interesting. So word of mouth, very powerful. Trade shows I'm hearing. It also sounds like, kind of being an ecosystem ally. So because you're one of the very important cogs in the supply fulfillment ecosystem by partnering with other ones who kind of flow into, hey, we made your first product, but now you got to go to mass production. You found that product market fit there.
Yes.
Very, very fascinating because going down that funnel. I always like thinking about, hey, what are those funnels and where do you fit in? It sounds like you found a very sweet spot where prototypers they also need
Yeah.
someone to do the fulfillment and the final production.
And the way that happened was organic, and these things take time, right? So like we're working with a client, and then that client says, hey, we want to introduce you to our designers because they're the ones that like you need to make what they're designing into reality. So you then do a good job for that design group for that client. And then that designer then says, hey, guess what? I have this other project over here and this other project over there and this other project over there. You guys did such a good job for customer A. Could you help us with customer B, C, and D to make their things as well executed as you did for customer A? And this is exactly how it happens. And it happens organically, and it happens over some levels of time and development of trust. So back to the original point that I said is reputation is everything. There's a lot of times where we have to take the responsibilities for things that we have not done, meaning like, let's say a manufacturer error, however small or minuscule, we will take on those roles and responsibilities to make sure the customer is made whole, feel happy, the bridge is made between the incentives of the customer and the incentives of the factory. These are two divergent philosophies. These two groups do not have the same incentives because the customer wants the I's dotted, the T's crossed, exactly what it is. It's their baby, it's their product. The factory just wants to get it done quick and move on to the next group, regardless on how good they are, how many years they've been doing this. So you need a bridge that is going to bridge the needs and goals and incentives of both of these groups and have both of their interests in mind. And that's what we do too. So that's a very important role that we play right then and there.
Yeah, the analogies and the words you use, it's like it reminds me of like a mediator between two parties, and you have to find the happy medium.
Yeah.
But keep both sides happy.
Yeah, we put on the fireman's costume every day, and we go out and we put out whatever fires are happening and try to make everybody sort of happy around. And there are times that, it's very infrequent because we do a good job of what we do, but there are times where the needs can't fully be met on both sides. And then that's where we have to have even more skin in the game to just kind of get it to get to where it needs to get to,
So you touched upon this lightly, where you're starting to dabble in the world of digital marketing. I'm kind of curious to see if you both personally for the Atlas Network and then also for some of your customers, like what are some of these growth marketing opportunities that you're seeing either for Atlas or some of your customers? What's working right now, especially during this market?
I mean, I cannot answer that without talking about AI. I think it's very, very important that we're discussing AI and its impacts in business, and especially in product sourcing and production. We saw some of this information when we were at the Alibaba Co-Create event. There were some great seminars on this. And
I saw those.
What's that?
I also saw those. Very kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have you explain.
Yeah, no, what it is that it's absolutely critical and important, especially in kind of the ideation, design, and initial development phase, right? Where a design group, a designer, may take thousands of dollars to come up with a couple of mock-ups and concepts and so forth, a lot of back and forth type of work, and in the end the customer really isn't in control. They sort of like give some ideas and then the designer goes away and comes back, whatever, and that process can take a significant amount of cost and time, and honestly design is a bit subjective. So you may not even land on exactly what you want. And then you may say, well, we like what we got, but it's not exactly what we wanted, but we're kind of happy. And it's one of those. Well, what we're seeing is through AI, especially platforms like Midjourney and Adobe and other kinds of platforms like this, people are able to just put in exactly what it is that they're looking for. I am looking for a silver matte finish 12-ounce cup with a beveled edge and a black top, and it's going to have to be able to be withstand heat and cold and this and that, whatever, with a handle. And they put in all these keywords, and then out pops like 20 renderings, right? immediately in seconds.
Which would take normally like a long
months of a designer being like, well, what do you mean exactly? And how exactly do you want it to be? And so on and so forth. And so, folks are able to get to a place with the ideation stage and the design and initial development so much faster than they would have previously, and at a fraction of the cost, if in some cases not even any cost. Some of this is just open source programs. Like it doesn't even cost anything. And the nice thing about it is that depending upon how complex the softwares are and so on, it can even generate like CADs and 3D renderings. And then all you need to do is you just provide that to a manufacturing group, whether it's a plastics group or metal group, whatever. And then you then have prototypes. You can manufacture prototypes, either 3D prototypes or otherwise. So I really do believe that when we're talking about kind of digital side and kind of suggestions for customers and sort of innovations that are happening in our space, that's a big one, a really, really big one that I think is going to create a significant amount of kind of push button development. Also in that Alibaba seminar, we learned about the fact, this is about more the digital marketing side, that for groups that are like more like B2C groups, that they may be able to do things like even like test the market or poll the market by syncing up some of these renderings to the Shopify store. So they'll go in there and they'll make like 50 different renderings or something and put it up on Shopify, and then whatever starts like pre-selling or whatever starts like getting hit more, they then say, oh, design B or design F was the best one of all of these. So there's a mechanism right there where you can use that for some levels of like polling and marketing if you have big crowds. So instead of like developing a product and then taking high resolution photos and pictures and saying, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? You can create in a matter of seconds 50 renditions and then land on like, let's say the top 3 and say, 75% of people were clicking like, I like this one the most. And then you then have honed in and use that as an R&D kind of a tool for development and prototyping. So, I think that's quite powerful.
Wow. I didn't, the way you explain it is because you're looking at it from the light of like you being on the sourcing side, and I can see how it can expedite the customer feedback, the customer surveying, just because those renderings could be generated so quickly with AI.
And even the product development, the choice to go down a certain road or not, say, hey, we're thinking about making, 10 different watches. They're all the same, but one's pink and one's purple, and one's green and one's orange and one's this and the other. And 70% of people keep hitting the blue one. So you're like, all right, well, it looks like blue is the one that people seem to want. And you can do all of that, very easily at the push of a button. So it's absolutely amazing. And I think that the more that those tools become more turnkey and more accessible for people, the more that this whole entire sort of product development part of the manufacturing process is going to become much more streamlined for businesses. I think it's quite powerful.
That. Kind of looking into the future, see, that's pretty exciting. And just to touch upon one thing I saw at Alibaba's event, they have an AI augmented visual search. So you can even, let's say you're at the airport and you like this product, just take a picture, and its visual search can even identify the product for you.
Yeah, the one thing I always worry about with that, and it's so funny because customers, when they come, especially ones with new innovative ideas, are always saying, how do I make sure no one's like copying my stuff? And I always say, what you don't have to worry about is the factories doing that, because factories are just too busy. They're just going to go with a paying customer. I always say the person you do have to worry about is the person next to you in Starbucks who takes a look at whatever you're doing and says, I like that. And then wants to, then take a picture and then send it somewhere. I'm not saying via Alibaba because that's not the point, but take that picture, send it overseas and say, make me something like this. And then, you have different kinds of issues like that. But I do think that a tool like that or something like that is quite powerful in the fact that, and this is one of the things that I said on the stage when I was talking at the Co-Create, is that Alibaba is an amazing R&D tool. If you ever wanted to make a product, all you have to do is go into Alibaba and type in some keywords or take a picture like you said and see 50 products that are similar to what you're doing, and then you understand the landscape of the market. You understand what's actually out there, how you may want to be different than what's out there, what kind of innovations have been done, what kind of things you want to do differently. So anybody who ever wants to like pioneer or create a product, the first thing they should do is go to a platform like an Alibaba, type in keywords that are similar to what they want to do, and just understand the market, what's out there that's similar, and that's a good like launching pad for you to then be able to understand what you're going to make or how it's going to be the same or different than what exists.
You have sharing so many nuggets, gems here with the community, and thank you so much. And just to finish things off, and I know you have so much experience in the industry, and just listening to you talk about these 3 pillars to avoid pitfalls. What are some of the lessons that you'd share to entrepreneurs? Just looking back.
I mean, what I would tell you is for entrepreneurs looking back, the lessons. Do the right thing by your customers. Present an accurate depiction of what it is that you're looking to achieve with your business, with your product, with your mission. Stay true to that, because customers will see through it otherwise. It's very important. Always be willing to put quality over quantity and reliability over price. These things are very, very important. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a premium versus like a value type of product, but that is important. And then also always provide value adds and strategic vision. If you can give strategic vision to your customers with the products you make, or that it fulfills a need or a service that you're doing or otherwise, it always is going to be held to the highest standard, because you're not just kind of like a one-trick pony or a one-sided type of a business. People appreciate diversification of product and business and SKUs. So wherever you can kind of be able to expand out, it is also quite important.
Kareem, thank you so much for the knowledge you've shared, and thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show, and great experience. And if any of your listeners out there have any need for what we do, we're at theatlasnetwork.com, and happy to help anybody that needs assistance in global supply chain solutions.
All right. I have to ask, is the Atlas reference to the one that holds up the earth in Greek mythology?
Exactly, it is, because the idea is that we are bearing the weight of those issues so that customers don't have to. And that's really the concept there, that it's kind of that we're going to put those burdens on our shoulders, and so that you can basically thrive as a business, grow and develop. So that's exactly right.